I'd like you to think for a moment back to when you were a kid, a teenager perhaps. And I want you to think about what you wanted to be when you grew up. Because of the size of the room, I won't have you necessarily shout things out, but raise your hand if your answer is fighter pilot, nurse, teacher, veterinarian, astronaut, physician. All right, good. So those are some of the standard ones. I think my favorite one was bacon tester. Somebody's got to make sure it tastes good, right? Now, what I'd like you to think about is through the course of your working life. Again, this could be from teenager all the way up till today. I want you to think about your favorite job. What is the job that you loved? What is the one that you would have or maybe even did sacrifice to do? For how many of you is that answer to the second question the same as the answer to the first question? Like 5 of you. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, right? Most of us don't get to grow up and be what we hoped to be when we were older. We didn't get to be astronauts. We didn't get to be physicians. We didn't get to be the nurse or the teacher, right? Some of us, a few of us get to do that, but for most of us, we don't. Like some people just end up being the night auditor at the Holiday Inn Express. And that's okay. Like my favorite job, other than what I do now, because that's just cheating, but my favorite job was working at a bagel shop when I was 18 years old. It was on Main Street in Salt Lake City, right next to the Salt Lake Tribune building when newspapers were still a thing. And every day at lunch, we would have lines out the door of people waiting to get their food. And it wasn't the work that I did. I mean, making a bagel sandwich is not necessarily the most engaging job I've ever had. But the reason that I loved it, the reason that I would have sacrificed for it, the reason that I stuck around after my shift was over to help or to hang out with the people that I worked with was because of the culture that we had. It's because of the leader of that team, the guy who owned the place, who treated us so well, who treated us like family. And back when I was 18, as pretty much Wonder Bread, non-diverse as Salt Lake City was at the time, we had a pretty good mix of folks on our team. And whatever our background, whatever our beliefs, whatever our orientation, whatever our religion, whatever it was, we came together as a team, especially in these busy, stressful times, to help each other out, to be there for each other, to pick each other up when we fell down, and to help each other out when we were stressed out, right? So whatever that favorite job was for you, and again, I'd love to hear what some of these jobs were, but for the sake of the size of the room, we probably wouldn't be able to hear you. So my guess, after having done this little exercise with thousands of people, my guess is that that favorite job was your favorite, not because it was necessarily the job that brought you the most money. Maybe it was, but probably wasn't. It was probably because that job gave you some sense of meaning, some sense of fulfillment, something that you either were able to get out of it for yourself to make you better, or something that you were able to do for somebody else that made them better. This is what we naturally seek for as human beings. We are meaning-seeking machines. Without that meaning, if we don't have meaning and fulfillment in our work, the only thing we are left with is results. We put a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of focus around results, numbers, metrics, percentages. That's okay, because those numbers, those metrics are important. Those are the things that allow us to see that we're making progress. They're the yardstick that see that we're moving toward the goals that we have. Individually, it's important to hit those results because often our jobs are dependent upon our being able to hit the goals and metrics and targets that have been set for us. As organizations, it's important to hit those numbers because that's how we keep the doors open. I get it. I'm not suggesting that we get rid of the results, that we get rid of the numbers. That would sort of be like taking a road trip and having no idea how far it is to our destination. That's just silly, right? We need to see those signs. Los Angeles, 350 miles. Los Angeles, 200 miles. Los Angeles, 50 miles. Like, we can tell that we're getting somewhere and it feels good. Those results are important. What I'm suggesting is that we often put an unbalanced amount of focus on our results, which means that the meaning, the fulfillment that we naturally seek for as human beings is down here, while we put that unbalanced amount of focus on the numbers, and it just doesn't feel like it's supposed to, right? Passion goes down, stress goes up. We start showing up to work because we have to, not because we want to. There's a quote, and I've heard it come from a few different places, so I can't tell you exactly where it's from, but it says something like, to say that an organization exists to make money is like saying that human beings exist to eat food. Like, yeah, the food is important. Yes, the money is important, of course. But there's more than that. It's simply the fuel to help us do something more, something bigger. When we put an unbalanced amount of focus on the results, we will naturally take the actions that are required in order to achieve those results. And when we fall a little bit short, when we don't quite achieve the result that we're hoping for, the natural tendency that we have is to change our actions. We try to do something differently, implement new skills, behavior, technology, learning, whatever it is, to try to achieve the result that we've been tasked to achieve. When we do actually achieve that result, what happens? Well, now we've got to go to the next thing, right? The number now has to get bigger, and now we go back to our actions to try to do the things that we think we need to do in order to achieve that new higher result. What happens if we're not careful is that we get stuck in what I call the hamster wheel of action and results. Right? We show up to work every day, we have the checklist, we have the to-do list, we know what we need to do to achieve the result, but there's just something missing. Right? Of course, the numbers are motivating in the short term, especially if our compensation is tied to those numbers in some way. But if that's all we're doing is hitting the goal and then going after the next goal, hitting that one, going after the next goal, hitting that one, eventually it just gets exhausting. This hamster wheel is a problem for a lot of people, and I would imagine that most of us in this room, whether at some point in our career, have felt like we are just stuck in this hamster wheel, right? We get up on Monday morning, we go through the week, it's kind of a blur, we can't wait for Friday, we get that pit in our stomach on Sunday night knowing we have to go back to the job we don't really want to do on Monday. We get stuck in this cycle. This is a problem for a lot of people. Gallup does a worldwide engagement study. They found that around the planet there are about 3 billion employed people. And of those 3 billion people, there is a percentage of people who fall into one of two categories, either disengaged or actively disengaged. The disengaged folks are those who, when you ask them, how's work, they'll respond, it's fine. The actively disengaged folks are those who, when their feet hit the floor in the morning, their day actually gets worse because they have to go to work. What percentage of that 3 billion people do you think fall into those two categories? Yell out some numbers. 80. Let's start optimistic, shall we? 80. What else? 30. I love you, Leander. Thank you. 30. Anybody else? 75. We're back up to where we don't want to be. It's 87%. Right? 87% of our human family would just as soon drive their car into an irrigation ditch as go to work in the morning. This sucks. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And we sit in here, we laugh about it, and some of us are kind of like, ha, 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 that's me. Right? Statistically speaking, if we have 500-600 people in here, 13% of you, do some quick math, what is that, 85, 90 people, love what they do, everybody else hates it. This is not the way it was meant to be. I mean, if you think about it, how many of us, when we graduated high school or university and got into the job market, dreamed of doing a job that we couldn't stand to do every day? None of us, right? Think about, again, when you were a kid, we grew up with the dream of doing something, even if it wasn't something glamorous. We at least wanted to do something that we thought would be enjoyable. Nobody wants to go to a job that they hate. So what happens? Where's that gap? Well, we graduate, again, from high school, university, we get into the job market, and we get hit with this reality that is not what we hoped it would be. And we think, whoa, this is not what I was expecting. Over time, if we're not careful, we just sort of start to accept it, and we say, well, I guess this is just what it means to have a job. Necessary evil, got to pay the bills. Then, as we advance in our careers, we have this mindset, and we pass that along to the new crop of folks coming in, and we hit them in the face with it just like we were hit in the face with it when we started. It doesn't have to be this way. Right? There's a way to get out of this hamster wheel. What we have to do is simply take a step back and recognize what it is that gets us to fall into it to begin with, which is our perceptions. The things that we believe, the core values that we have, the lens through which we see the world, all of these perceptions, these assumptions, these beliefs dictate the actions that we take and therefore the results that we get. The results will always be the results, and again, I'm not suggesting that we get rid of those. What I'm suggesting is that we, instead of just looking at the numbers, the metrics, the percentages, what if we built into the results that we are going for a sense of meaning and fulfillment in the work that we do? My goal here today is not to give you actions that will make you do your job better, because I have no idea how to do your job. I just thank you for doing it. My goal is to help to shift your perception, maybe expand your perception a little bit. To take what you already have, what you already do, what you already know, and just to look at it from a slightly different angle.